Have you ever woke up at night, came downstairs, walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge door and stopped and said to yourself, what was it that you were looking for in the first place? I'm now going to talk about the essentials of memory. There are three essentials to memory: attention, interest and linking, and I'll deal with each one in turn. The first one, attention. I'd like you to visualize a couple spending the day together shopping, madly in love, hand in hand, so physically they spend the whole day together. That evening, however, they will both have had a different experience. So the man would have focused his attention more on business matters, whereas the woman, the stereotypical woman, would have concentrated more on fashion. This shows the link between attention and memory. The second thing I'd like to talk about is interest. In order to memorize something, you have to show interest. You have to give it a level of importance. Okay? So therefore, to go from that, you actually have to stimulate the brain. Okay? To show this example, I have a model of a brain here, and I'd like to go through the parts of the brain and discuss their main functions and relate this back to the topic. So the first part I want to talk about is the brain stem. This is the oldest part of the brain. The functions of the brain stem are: one, it manages or regulates the automative system, the heartbeat and breathing, for instance. The second function is called the reticular activating system, and this is what gives us awareness, selective awareness, to our surroundings. In times gone by, in the time of the caveman for instance, this alerted the caveman to any danger that was in his surroundings, which would give him the chance to respond and avoid the danger. So therefore, if you give yourself a strong image of something, okay, you are more likely to stimulate this part of the brain, and so you're more likely to remember it. Okay. The second part I want to talk about is this part here, which is called the cerebellum. Okay, it's an egg-like shaped part here. This part, the functions of this part are concerned with balance, poise and movement. So therefore, if you're trying to build a memory, you should incorporate some movement into the scene so as to help you memorize it. Even in the case of remembering a non-action scene such as a photograph, you can always imagine some movement. You could imagine the person standing on his head. You could imagine a funny gesture. Memory is a personal thing, so who is to know? Now the third part I want to talk about is called the limbic system. This is made up of a number of small organs, okay, and the functions of this part are concerned with short-term memory, long-term memory, and it is also the emotional center of the brain. So to stimulate this part of the brain is stimulated by novelty, fun. It's also stimulated by the unusual. Okay? So if we incorporate these things into building the memory, well then you stimulate this part of the brain. The last part I want to talk about is the cerebrum. This is the part of the brain we are most familiar with. It houses the left and right hemispheres. The left side of the brain is normally associated with logical functions, analysis and words, whereas the right side of the brain is our creative side, which deals with colour, imagination, daydreaming and association. Now, just to give you an example of this, The great thinkers in history were highly developed with both their left and right sides of their brains. And for instance, Einstein imagined himself travelling on a beam of light through the universe, and from this he actually developed the theory of relativity and developed the equation E is equal to mc squared. So Einstein, in that act, used both his right side, the creative side, and the left side, the logical, analytical side, to develop the equation E is equal to mc squared. The last essential I'd like to talk about is the idea of linking. We are all familiar with the concepts of growing a memory, building a memory, or adding to a memory. Secondly, the more connections we make around a topic, the greater the impression or imprint we're making on memory, and therefore the greater the chance and the greater the ease of recall. To give you an example of this, if we are trying to remember a special occasion such as a grandchild, we say a granddaughter's birthday party, we should try and build in mental markers such as the colour of her dress, the smell or taste of the food on the day, also the sense of or feeling of a hug or a caress, or we could also build in the sound of merriment or laughter. So a few weeks' time, when you go back to revisit that day in your mind, these mental markers will actually trigger further associations, so that to give you a more complete picture of the day. Now with practice, you can actually relive an event in your mind's eye to a great extent, even at some distance from the event in time. So the three essentials of memory therefore are attention, interest, and linking. I trust this information adds to your learning experience. Thank you, and bye for now.